The fluorescent lights of Gate 47 at JFK International Airport cast harsh shadows across Daniel Morrison's exhausted face as he juggled a squirming toddler, a diaper bag with a broken strap, and a boarding pass clutched between his teeth. His daughter Emma, barely 2 years old, had been crying for the past hour, her wails echoing through the departure lounge like a siren that made every head turn in their direction. Daniel's shirt bore the evidence of their chaotic morning, a coffee stain on the collar, baby food smeared across the shoulder, and sweat marks that betrayed just how close he was to completely falling apart. He hadn't slept in what felt like weeks, not since his wife Sarah had passed away 6 months ago, leaving him to navigate the terrifying waters of single parenthood alone. Every day felt like drowning, and today, with a funeral to attend in Michigan and a daughter who refused to be consoled, he was going under. Emma's cries intensified as Daniel tried to soothe her, rocking her gently while whispering promises he wasn't sure he could keep. The other passengers weren't hiding their irritation anymore. An elderly woman moved seats with an exaggerated huff. A businessman in a crisp suit rolled his eyes and turned up his AirPods. Daniel felt the weight of their judgment like stones in his pockets, pulling him deeper into a sea of shame and helplessness. He was doing his best, but his best never seemed good enough anymore. That's when he heard the voice, sharp and cutting through the noise like a blade. The words weren't in English, but the tone was unmistakable: contempt, disgust, superiority. Daniel glanced up to see a young man in his mid-20s, dressed in pristine white robes with gold embroidery that screamed wealth and privilege. His headdress was held in place by an eagle that looked like it cost more than Daniel's monthly rent. The man was speaking rapidly in Arabic to his companion, gesturing dismissively toward Daniel and Emma, his lip curled in what could only be described as a sneer. Daniel didn't need a translation to understand he was being insulted. The young man's companion laughed, and the sound felt like salt in an open wound. Daniel's face flushed red, not with anger but with humiliation. He wanted to defend himself, to explain that he was trying, that he was barely holding on, that losing Sarah had shattered his world into a million pieces he didn't know how to put back together. But what would be the point? This stranger had already judged him, found him lacking, and moved on. Except Daniel hadn't moved on. Because as the young man continued his tirade, assuming complete anonymity in his native tongue, Daniel caught specific words. Amma. Stupid. Layafham Shayan. He doesn't understand anything. Yajib and Layusafir Itakana Layastati, and Usadir, Allah Abni. He shouldn't travel if he can't control his children. Daniel's exhaustion crystallized into something else entirely. He took a deep breath, adjusted Emma on his hip, and turned to face the young man directly. When he spoke, his Arabic was flawless, the accent carrying the refined precision of someone who had spent years in the Middle East, not as a tourist but as someone who had lived and breathed the culture. Ma kul idirimi, Sayyidi, Qabla and Takam, Allah shaks latarifahu, Rabama Yajib, Alayka and Tafhama Kisatahu. With all due respect, sir, before you judge someone you don't know, perhaps you should understand their story. The effect was instantaneous and spectacular. The young man's face drained of color, his eyes widening in shock that quickly morphed into mortification. His companion's laughter died in his throat. Other Arabic-speaking passengers in the vicinity turned their attention to the unfolding scene. Some with expressions of surprise, others with barely concealed amusement at seeing the arrogant youth so thoroughly caught out. But Daniel wasn't finished. Years of pent-up grief, frustration, and exhaustion poured out in words that flowed like water. Hadihi ibnati Emma. Qabla sita ashhur, kanat laha kanat tuhibuha akthar min hayatiha. Walakina al-Sarah, Zajati, Tuwafiyat by Saratan al-Mathana fi al-Kamzawal, Ishrayan min, Umriya. Al-Yama, Ana mustajib lidawati li haduor janazat ukti, ma tiflati alati latafham limita latastati, and tunati, mama, bad al-anwal limita liyajibuha had. This is my daughter Emma. 6 months ago, she had a mother who loved her more than life itself. But Sarah, my wife, died of bladder cancer at 25 years old. Today, I'm responding to the call to attend my sister's funeral, with my little girl who doesn't understand why she can't call for Mama anymore and why no one answers. The silence that followed was deafening. Emma, as if sensing the shift in atmosphere, had quieted to soft whimpers against her father's chest. The young man stood frozen, his earlier arrogance completely evaporated, replaced by an expression of absolute horror at his own behavior. Ana Asif Jiddan, he whispered, his voice cracking with genuine remorse. I am so sorry. Daniel nodded, not with satisfaction at having embarrassed the young man, but with the weary acknowledgement of someone who had simply needed to be seen, to be understood, to have his struggle recognized. He turned away, ready to return to his seat and count down the minutes until boarding when he felt a gentle hand on his shoulder. The young man had moved closer, his eyes now glistening with unshed tears. Min Fadlik. Ismani. Ismi al-Amir Rashid bin Abdullah. No, please. Hear me. My name is Prince Rashid bin Abdullah. Prince. The word hung in the air, explaining the expensive clothes and the earlier entitlement. But what followed was something Daniel never expected. Qabla thalath sanawat, faqad tu akifai hadath sayyara. Kana umruhu sita wa, ishrun, man fakat. Wa mundu dalika al-waqt, hawaltu an asbaha shaks afdal, lakin al-yama adartu lakaya datan wa kazwatan layasta hikuha insan. Qubal ahaa, al-an. Wa raju and tusamihani. 3 years ago, I lost my brother in a car accident. He was only 26 years old. And since then, I've tried to become a better person, but today I showed you a rudeness and cruelty that no human being deserves. Please accept this now, and I hope you can forgive me. The prince reached into his robe and pulled out a sleek phone, speaking rapidly to someone on the other end. Before Daniel could process what was happening, the prince turned back to him with a determined expression. You mentioned traveling to Michigan for a funeral. Please, allow me to make this right. I have arranged for you to travel in comfort, in a manner befitting someone carrying such a heavy burden. Within 20 minutes, Daniel found himself ushered into the first-class lounge, with Emma happily munching on fresh fruit while airline staff transferred their belongings to first-class seats. But Prince Rashid didn't stop there. He sat with Daniel, asking about Sarah, listening with genuine interest as Daniel shared stories of the woman he'd loved and lost. The prince spoke of his own brother, of grief that never quite heals but somehow becomes bearable with time. Ma al-Waqt, lan yakif al-Alam, walakinaka sat alam kaifa tamila by Sheikh al-Afdal, Rashid said softly. With time, the pain won't lessen, but you will learn how to carry it better. As boarding began, Rashid handed Daniel a card with his personal contact information. If you or Emma ever need anything at all, you contact me directly. This is not charity. This is one father, one brother, one human being helping another. The flight to Michigan was the first peaceful travel experience Daniel had known in months. Emma slept soundly in the spacious seat, and for the first time since Sarah's death, Daniel felt something he'd almost forgotten: hope. Not the naive hope that things would return to how they were, but the realistic hope that maybe, just maybe, he and Emma would find a way through this darkness. When they landed, Daniel discovered that Prince Rashid had arranged for a car service to take them directly to the funeral and had somehow coordinated with the hotel to upgrade their room and ensure it was stocked with everything a toddler might need. But more than the material gestures, it was the message waiting on Daniel's phone that made tears finally stream down his face. Anta Laysa Amak. Anta Battle. Idha Kanat Ibnatuka Takbar Lidikuan Nyasf al Rajal Aladi Anta, Alahi, Fasikuan Imratan Latasadachu. Ta'alamni al Yama and al Kuwa al Hachichia Laysat Fi al Mala al Manzila, Walakina Fii al Hub Aladi Namila Liazaina, Hata, Indama Yakuan Hamlahem Yashar Muklaisen. You're not stupid. You're a hero. If your daughter grows up to be half the man you are, she will be an incredible woman. You taught me today that true strength is not in money or position, but in the love we carry for our loved ones, even when carrying them feels exhausting. 3 weeks later, Daniel received another message. Prince Rashid had established a foundation in his brother's name, dedicated to supporting single parents who had lost spouses to illness. Daniel was invited to speak at the launch event, to share Sarah's story and his journey. Standing on that stage, with Emma in his arms and hundreds of faces looking up at him with compassion rather than judgment, Daniel understood something profound. That moment in the airport could have been just another story of prejudice and misunderstanding. Instead, it became a story of transformation, of two men from vastly different worlds finding common ground in their shared experience of loss and love. Prince Rashid had learned that assumptions can blind us to the humanity in others, while Daniel had learned that even in our darkest moments, connection and compassion can find us in the most unexpected ways. The foundation flourished, helping thousands of families navigate the impossible journey of single parenthood after loss. And though Daniel and Rashid came from different continents, spoke different languages, and walked different paths, they became true friends united by the understanding that grief is a universal language, and so is the courage to keep going when everything in you wants to stop. Years later, when Emma was old enough to understand, Daniel would tell her about the day a prince called him stupid, and how that moment of cruelty transformed into a lifelong friendship built on mutual respect, shared pain, and the remarkable capacity of human beings to choose kindness over pride. He would tell her that her mother would have loved the ending to that story, because Sarah always believed that the best in people usually shows up right after we've seen their worst. And Emma, wise beyond her years, would simply nod and say what her father had learned that day at Gate 47, that we are all fighting battles others cannot see, and the least we can do, the very least, is choose understanding over judgment, compassion over contempt, and connection over the isolation of our own assumptions.